The Second Galactic Civil War features a very interesting battle, one where turbo laser range appears to be the decisive factor. We'll break all that down and more in today's video. Today's video is brought to you by Opera Browser, which is geared for efficient and beautiful browsing and packed with a ton of new features. For example, my favorite, with floating music player, you can control your music without interrupting your browsing. You can even use it outside the browser, which means you can skip or pause a song anytime you need to concentrate. To keep your efficiency up, split screen also allows you to work on two documents at the same time. And thanks to Aria, Opera's integrated AI tool, I can easily organize my tabs. I press Control or Command +/, the Aria command pops up, and I simply give a command. I can even organize related tabs in tab islands and then expand and collapse as needed. And with tab traces, I can easily track recently visited tabs. Darker the underscore, the more recently visited. Opera's also pretty. With themes, you can customize every aspect of the browser, from animations to shaders. My personal favorite is Aurora, but they're easy to test out and switch. So check the new Opera browser out. The link is in the description. You can download it for free, and it's super easy to import everything from your current browser, so give it a try. Thanks, Opera. Alright, so today we're talking the Second Galactic Civil War. I know some of you aren't as familiar with this era, so I will give a brief recap. If you just want a breakdown of the Battle of Balmorra itself, go to the time on screen. Now, I've done a whole primer video, which I'll also link down below, but in short, after the Yuuzhan Vong War, the Galactic Alliance, the successor state to the New Republic, is facing down a revolution of its own in a war which closely mirrors the Clone Wars nearly 60 years earlier. An ever-growing faction within the galaxy known as the Confederation is now in open warfare against the Galactic Alliance. The Confederation is made up of many powerful, independently minded planets and systems, including Corellia, Cominor, Bothui, the Hutts, and many others. The Battle of Balmorra takes place in 40 ABY, i.e. 40 years after the Battle of Yavin, and at this point, Jacen Solo, son of Han and Leia, has fallen to the dark side and embraced his title of Darth Caedus. The Battle of Cominor takes place in Star Wars Legacy of the Force Inferno, and in the prior novel, Jacen finally achieved full Sith status by killing his aunt, Mara Jade Skywalker, wife of Luke. Jacen, Caedus, is leading the Galactic Alliance and has begun to dip his toes heavily into the powers of Sith battle meditation. Now, many of you are probably familiar with battle meditation as used by Bastila Shan, for example, in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, where she essentially empowers those under her command, making them better fighters, usually by coordinating attacks and strategy while also removing any negative emotional thoughts like doubt. Caedus's battle meditation is more advanced. He'd been using techniques like flow walking to see into the past and future, and he essentially has seen the Second Galactic Civil War as coming down to one key battle, the eventual Battle of Kuat. However, he realizes that as forces currently stand, in a straight battle, the Galactic Alliance will actually lose to the Confederation, who will continue their rampage to Coruscant and the core. This sets up the Battle of Balmorra, a battle the GA is really inequipped for, but which Jacen sees as an unknowing trap to launch against the Confederation, a trap really only he understands. So let's set the scene. On the Confederation side, we have, first of all, a Cominorian fleet described as Imperial in composition, made up of several different classes of Imperial Star Destroyers and several other small ship type. Accompanying the fleet from Cominor is a Hutt fleet, which is primarily being used to launch the invasion of Balmorra itself. The Hutt fleet is made up mostly of smaller ships, and their job is largely to escort landing craft to the planet's surface. On the GA's side, we have the Galactic Alliance 4th Fleet and the starship Anakin Solo as commanded by Caedus. Still, by the way, a secret Sith Lord. The Confederation fleet is first at Balmorra and only has the planet's shield and defensive platforms to contend with, which it does with ease. The GA fleet arrives far from action and is forced to travel at sublight speeds to the planet in order to engage the Confederation in combat. The problem is that at this point, the Galactic Alliance has been developing long-range turbo lasers. This technology has now fallen into the hands hands of the Confederation and has been installed on some of the larger Commonorian vessels. This is a really interesting situation and shows off the strength of the technology. What kind of range can these vessels effectively hit an enemy warship at? We don't know specifically, as you can probably tell by the lack of concrete ship details, for example. Legacy of the Force often skims on the specifics, but the turbo lasers are said to hit from beyond visible range. The problem for the Galactic Alliance is that as Commonor and the Hutts have established supremacy over Balmorra, they can easily start to land assault shuttles to take the planet's surface while also peppering the GA fleet, which has to move into position. The GA is in a real pickle here because only the largest ships have the powerful long-range batteries, and they take so much energy to fire that it cannot be done while also maintaining shields and engines. So while the Commonorians are happy to sit with their engines completely off, all power going to guns, the GA fleet needs to travel together, and that means for a time they're essentially being hit without able to strike back. Almost any military commander at this point would have jumped away because the GA has started taking serious losses, but Jason believes the Force is telling him to stay in the battle. The Anakin Solo at this point seems to be in a rearguard position, honestly mostly facilitating Jason's battle meditation, to be honest. The flagship nearly calls off the attack until Jason convinces the Admiral to keep pushing, proving through his battle meditation that he does have insight through the Force. Still, that flagship is itself destroyed, and Jason moves the flag to the Truce Maker, commanded by none other than Gavin Darklighter, who I know my fans of the Star Wars X-Wing series certainly remember. Gavin ends up providing the spark the Force was hinting at to Jason Solo, as he rather recklessly sends pretty much the fleet's full detachment of starfighters to harass the Balmorran fleet. With the Star Destroyers and other vessels largely focused on long-range bombardment, they lack the power or flexibility to respond to these starfighters, and the GA ends up winning the starfighter battle, so they essentially move freely among the Commonorian destroyers, wreaking havoc until the GA fleet is able to get in range. As they get closer to the planet, the Commonorian forces begin to retreat, and the GA ships start to launch pot shots at the Hutt forces still invading the planet's surface. Jason, however, prohibits this, explaining that what's important here is really to change the calculus of the Battle of Kuat. Balmorra will have to take care of itself. At the same time, the Jedi enter the fray. The relationship between the GA and the Jedi is extremely strained at this point. Jason is clearly falling to the dark side. He's even occupied the Jedi Temple on Ossus, but ultimately Luke and his force of about 70 Stealth X's decide to help after bluffing, and having attacked from the flank with full stealth capabilities, devastate the Commonorian forces. Stealth X's have very little in electronic signature, their munitions are fired through the Force, and their shadow bombs are devastating, leading in the end to the loss of Balmorra, but an almost complete destruction of the joint Commonor-Hutt fleet. So much so, they're not even able to contribute whatsoever at the Battle of Kuat. Anyway, that's my explanation. Some interesting strategy here. I'd like to see technology like long-range turbo lasers, and really just a discussion of range generally more frequently in Star Wars novels. Obviously, the Commonorians and the Hutts would have really benefited from screening vessels to protect their large capital ships, because it really only was starfighters which saved the J for the GA, and had they been able to screen against that, they would have whittled down the attacking forces. But that's my take on the battle. Let me know yours down below. Have you read Legacy of the Force? Should I cover the Battle of Kuat next? Let me know your thoughts on all that and more down below.